Welcome to the Fatter Wallet Show, because stewardship isn't about being broke. On this show, we read the books, break down the ideas, and articulate the best thinking on money, investing, entrepreneurship, productivity, financial strategy, and wealth creation. Every episode is designed to help you stop guessing, start growing, and build a life of freedom, purpose, and stewardship. And if you're tired of feeling stuck financially, this is exactly where you need to be, because at Fatter Wallets, we don't just talk about money, we teach you how to master it. Before we jump in, I want to invite you to grab our courses available at fatterwallets.com. Inside, you'll discover courses like how to pay off your mortgage in 3 to 7 years using the velocity banking strategy. This method shows you step-by-step how to restructure your debt, use cash flow as a weapon, and eliminate loans in record time without earning more money and without working extra hours. Also learn how to turn the stocks you already own into weekly income using covered calls. You'll discover how to rent out your shares, generate consistent premium income, and dramatically increase your ROI with our beginner-friendly options trading course. All of this is 100% free because we believe financial wisdom should empower people, not lock them behind a paywall. So if you're ready to think bigger, live wiser, and grow fatter wallet God's way, you're in the right place. All right, let's get into today's discussion. We are looking at the foundational psychological framework laid out in Thinking Fast and Slow. This work is absolutely essential for anyone serious about mastering money because it really explains why our brains are actively wired to make, poor financial choices. So let's start with the central ideas, this metaphor of your brain being run by two different agents.
Right. Two systems that handle information in fundamentally different ways. This is where it all begins, right? System 1 and System 2.
It's the ultimate executive team. You've got System 1, which is your intuitive, automatic, just lightning fast worker. It does simple things, recognizes a face, finishes a common phrase like salt and
Pepper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It generates these impressions, feelings, intuitions with zero effort. It's always on.
And then there's System 2, slow one.
That's the deliberate, effortful, conscious agent that you think of as you. The part that, does long division or compares two different insurance policies or forces you to bite your tongue in a meeting.
The rational self.
Supposedly. Yeah. And the division of labor between them is, on the surface, incredibly efficient. System 1 is just constantly building a coherent story about what's happening.
And System 2, I love the term for it, the lazy controller.
The lazy controller, it's so perfect because System 2 wants to do as little work as possible, so it mostly just signs off on whatever gut feeling or quick suggestions System 1 comes up with.
Because actually checking everything would just be exhausting.
Completely exhausting. And look, 95% of the time, this works beautifully. But it's that other 5% where System 1 generates a systematic error, a cognitive bias, and the lazy controller doesn't step in to check the math.
And that's where we make these predictably bad financial moves.
That's exactly it.
You mentioned that this laziness isn't just a metaphor. The effort that System 2 uses is a limited physical resource.
Oh, it's remarkably physical. There's this research using pupillometry, which is just a fancy way of saying they measure how much your pupils dilate.
Right.
And what they found is that as the mental effort for a task goes up, say you have to remember a string of 7 digits, your pupils get wider. They're a direct physical indicator of cognitive strain.
So my eyes are literally giving away how hard my brain is working.
They are. And when you're in that state, what the research calls a frantic sprint, you can't sustain it. Your brain burns through this limited resource of attention, and then what does it do?
It defaults back to System 1, back to what's easy.
Back to what's easy. Which brings us to the perfect, simple example of this failure. The bat and ball problem.
Okay, let's hear.
So a bat and a ball cost $1.10 in total. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost?
10 cents.
That's the answer that pops into almost everyone's head. It's instantaneous. It feels right. It's System 1 shouting the answer.
But it's wrong, isn't it? If the ball is 10 cents and the bat is $1 more, the bat is $1.10. The total is $1.20.
Exactly. The correct answer is 5 cents. The ball is 5 cents. The bat is $1.05. The total is $1.10.
Wow. Okay.
The point isn't that the math is hard. The point is that the initial intuitive answer is so appealing that most people don't engage System 2 to do that simple check. It's what they call intellectual sloth.
And that's different from intelligence. You could be a genius and still get this wrong.
Many highly intelligent people do, because it's not about raw processing power. It's about the habit of overriding your intuition, of being rational and skeptical of that first easy answer.
That's a huge lesson. If you're building a financial model and the first numbers look good, you have to force yourself to recheck. The easy answer might be wrong.
You have to. And this reliance on ease, it leads us into the world of cognitive illusions, where even when you know the truth, System 1 still gets it wrong.
Like those optical illusions with the two lines that look different lengths, but they're actually the same.
The Muller-Lyer illusion,
yeah.
exactly. You can pull out a ruler, you can measure them, you know for a fact they are the same length, but your eyes still see one as longer, the illusion persists.
So System 2 knows the fact, but System 1 still generates the wrong feeling.
Right. And in finance, that means you can know a stock is overvalued based on your analysis, but you still feel the pull of the herd, the FOMO, because System 1 is screaming, everyone else is getting rich.
That's a constant battle. This leads to something even more kind of terrifying, the idea of intellectual blindness, the invisible gorilla study.
This one is just stunning. It's the ultimate proof that intense focus can make you blind to the obvious.
So they had people watch a video of two teams passing basketballs.
Right, one team in white shirts, one in black. And your task is very specific. Count the exact number of passes made by the team in white. It requires intense focus. System 2 is in a full sprint.
And while you're counting, something unusual happens.
A person in a full gorilla suit walks into the middle of the game, turns to the camera, thumps their chest, and then slowly walks off. They're on screen for 9 full seconds.
And then the result.
About half the people who do the experiment never see the gorilla. They are so focused on counting the passes that they are completely blind to a chest-thumping gorilla in the middle of the screen.
That's unbelievable. And when you ask them afterwards, they're certain nothing happened.
Absolutely certain. Which reveals two critical facts. One, we can be blind to the obvious. And two, we are also blind to our own blindness.
So if you, as an investor, are intensely focused on the best case scenario for a company, you're running the numbers, building the growth models, what's the gorilla you're missing?
It could be anything. A massive shift in the market, a fatal flaw in the business model, an ethical red flag with the CEO, something obvious and huge that your focused System 2 has filtered out because it wasn't part of the immediate task. You have to actively schedule time to look for the gorilla.
Okay, so we've established System 1 is lazy, System 2 is easily distracted, and we're blind to our own blindness. Let's dig into how System 1 actually works. You call it an associative machine.
That's the engine of it all. Associative activation. You see one word, and it immediately triggers a cascade of related ideas, memories, emotions, even physical responses. Everything is linked.
And that's what leads to the priming effect, right? Where some unconscious exposure can change how you behave.
Yes, and the research here on money is frankly critical for our audience. They've found that money itself primes individualism.
What does that mean exactly? How do you prime someone with money?
It's incredibly subtle. In the studies, they would have a screensaver on a computer with images of dollar bills floating by, or they just have a stack of Monopoly money sitting on the corner of the desk. That's it.
Just the idea of money in the background.
Just the idea. And the people who were primed with these reminders of money became profoundly more selfish and self-reliant.
More selfish how? What did they do?
Two big things. First, they became more self-reliant. When given a very difficult puzzle, they worked almost twice as long before asking for help compared to the control group.
Okay, so more independent.
And second, they became more selfish. When an experimenter accidentally dropped a handful of pencils, the money-primed people picked up significantly fewer of them. They even chose to place their chair farther away from a stranger they were about to meet.
Wow. So living in a world that's saturated with financial news, stock tickers, ads,
Yeah.
it might be unconsciously pushing us to be more isolated.
It suggests that if your goal is stewardship, which involves community, generosity, collaboration,
Yeah.
you have to be aware that the very environment of wealth building might be subtly working against those values.
That is a massive thing to keep in mind. And this associative machine, it's also responsible for what we call cognitive ease.
Mm-hmm. Cognitive ease is that feeling of fluency, of comfort. When information is easy to process, it feels familiar, comfortable, and true. System 1 mistakes ease for truth.
This has huge implications for anyone trying to communicate an idea, like pitching an investment.
Absolutely. The way to be persuasive is to reduce cognitive strain. Maximize legibility. Use a clear font, good contrast. But here's the counterintuitive part. Use simple language.
Don't try to sound smart.
Do not try to sound smart. When you use complex, jargon-filled language, you create cognitive strain. That strain makes people feel uncomfortable, and they transfer that discomfort to your message. Your credibility actually goes down.
So simplifying your message makes it more believable.
And repetition helps too. It's called the mere exposure effect. Just hearing a statement over and over again, even if it's nonsense, creates familiarity. Familiarity creates cognitive ease, and ease gets interpreted as truth.
That explains, well, a lot about marketing and politics. It also explains why a good story is so powerful.
A good story is the ultimate in cognitive ease. It's coherent, it connects the dots. And System 1 doesn't care if key information is missing. It only cares about the coherence of the story. Confidence is a feeling, and that feeling comes from a good story, not from the quality of the evidence.
Okay, let's get into the specific mental shortcuts, the heuristics that System 1 uses to build these stories. First up is representativeness.
Representativeness is basically our tendency to rely on stereotypes. We judge how likely something is, but how much it resembles our mental prototype of that category.
And this causes us to ignore what are they called? Base rates.
Base rates, the underlying statistical reality. The classic example is Steve the librarian.
Right, so you get a description of Steve. He's meek, tidy, has a passion for detail.
And then you're asked, is it more likely that Steve is a librarian or a farmer? And almost everyone says librarian because the description fits the stereotype perfectly.
But statistically.
Statistically, there are vastly, vastly more male farmers in the world than male librarians. So even with that description, the sheer base rate probability means it's much more likely he's a farmer. System 1 grabs the vivid story and ignores the cold, hard stats.
And the financial cost of that is huge.
Yeah.
You hear a pitch for a new tech startup from a brilliant, charismatic founder, and you ignore the base rate that 90% of tech startups fail.
Exactly. Which leads directly to the Linda conjunction fallacy. So Linda is described as 31, single, outspoken, very bright. She was a philosophy major, and as a student, she was deeply concerned with issues of discrimination and social justice.
Okay.
Now, which is more probable? 1, Linda is a bank teller. Or 2, Linda is a bank teller and is active in the feminist movement.
Well, number 2 feels more likely. It fits the story better.
It feels more likely to almost everyone, but it's logically impossible for it to be more probable.
Because the group of bank tellers has to be larger than the subgroup of feminist bank tellers.
Precisely. But System 1 doesn't do logic, it does coherence. Feminist bank teller is a richer, more plausible story, so it feels more probable. We fall for detailed scenarios, especially in financial forecasting, when we should be betting on the broader, more likely outcomes.
Okay, so that's representativeness. The next big one is the availability heuristic.
This is all about judging frequency by the ease with which examples come to mind.
So if I can think of it easily, I assume it happens a lot.
You do. Things that are dramatic, recent, or get a lot of media coverage are highly available in our memory. So we systematically overestimate how often they happen. Think about shark attacks versus, say, falling coconuts.
Right. We hear about every shark attack, so we think it's a huge risk when it's statistically tiny.
And this bias even affects our personal relationships. Everyone in a team or a marriage overestimates their own contribution.
Because my own efforts are more available in my memory. I was there for every late night I worked. I wasn't there for theirs.
That's the mechanism. So a great piece of advice is to always assume that in any joint project, the total credit everyone feels they deserve adds up to way more than 100%. If you remember that, you can head off a lot of arguments.
That is very practical. Now, this gets even more dangerous when availability gets tied up with emotion. The effect heuristic.
This is where the emotional tail wags the rational dog. Put simply, if you like something, you judge its benefits to be high and its risks to be low. If you dislike it, you do the opposite.
So if I'm passionate about, say, electric vehicles, because I believe in the mission, my brain will unconsciously downplay the investment risks involved.
It will. Your positive feeling, your affect, colors your entire risk-benefit analysis without you even realizing it. And this can be amplified across society in what's called an availability cascade.
Okay, what's that?
It's a self-reinforcing cycle. A relatively minor risk gets media attention. That coverage makes the risk highly available in people's minds, which creates public worry and emotional arousal.
And that worry becomes a story in itself, which drives more media coverage.
And it just spirals. Soon, you have widespread public panic and policymakers are forced to act, often spending huge amounts of resources on a statistically minor issue, all because of an emotional cascade fueled by availability. System 1 reacts to the scary story, and System 2 just gets swept up in the panic.
So the way our brains work naturally leads us to be overconfident. And a huge reason for this is a concept you call WYSIAD.
WYSIAD. It stands for what you see is all there is.
Okay.
It's the core operating principle of System 1. It takes whatever information is immediately available and constructs the most coherent story possible. It is radically insensitive to the quality or the quantity of that information.
So it doesn't care that there's missing data.
It doesn't even know there's missing data. If the story hangs together, System 1 accepts it and suppresses all doubt.
So if I'm looking at an investment and the pitch deck has a great story and nice graphics, my brain just runs with it. It doesn't automatically ask, wait, what about the competitive analysis they left out?
No, that question is a System 2 function, and it requires effort. WYSIAD is what fuels overconfidence and the halo effect.
The halo effect being, if I like one thing about something, I assume everything about it is good.
Exactly. You meet a CEO who is charismatic and confident. That positive first impression, the halo, makes you unconsciously assume their business plan is also brilliant without ever checking it. Your confidence comes from the coherence of the story, not the quality of the evidence.
Which makes us incredibly vulnerable to manipulation, even from completely random numbers. This is the anchoring effect.
Anchoring is one of the most robust and powerful biases there is. Any number that you consider, even for a moment, influences any subsequent estimate you make.
Even a totally irrelevant number.
Even a completely random number. In one famous study, they had judges spin a wheel of fortune that was rigged to land on either 10 or 65. Then they asked the judges to recommend a prison sentence for a shoplifter.
Don't tell me.
The judges who saw the high number, 65, recommended significantly longer sentences than the judges who saw the low number, 10. The random number anchored their judgment.
That's deeply unsettling.
Yeah.
And it works through two different ways, right? It affects both systems.
It does. For System 2, it's a process of adjustment. If I ask you, is the population of Turkey more or less than 100 million? You know it's less, and you start adjusting down from that high anchor. But you tend to stop adjusting too soon.
You end up with a higher estimate than you would have otherwise.
And for System 1, it works through priming. The mere mention of the number 100 million makes your brain start thinking about large countries, big populations. It primes those ideas, making them more available and skewing your final guess.
This is so critical for any kind of negotiation. The first number put on the table matters immensely.
It sets the entire frame for the conversation. Studies on real estate agents, people who should be experts, show that they are powerfully anchored by the listing price of a house when they're asked to appraise its value.
So the takeaway for you, the listener, is if you're going into a negotiation, you have to do your own homework and generate your own anchor before you hear their number.
If you don't, their number will become your reality.
Okay, let's shift from valuation to prediction. We have this belief that skill is what drives success in uncertain fields, like stock picking. But the evidence points to a massive illusion of skill.
The findings here are humbling, to say the least. There was a major study that looked at the performance of investment advisors over many years. They were looking for consistency.
Did they find it?
They found that the correlation between an advisor's success in one year and their success in the next year was just about zero.
Zero. Not low, but zero.
Practically zero. It was statistically indistinguishable from a game of chance, from luck.
But these people feel like they're exercising incredible skill. They're reading reports, building models.
Oh, their subjective experience is one of intense, high-level skill. System 2 is working overtime. But the environment, the stock market, is so complex and unpredictable that that skill doesn't translate into predictable outcomes.
So why do we believe in it so strongly?
Because of two other powerful biases, the narrative fallacy and hindsight bias.
The narrative fallacy is our need to create simple, clean stories about the past.
We look at a success story like Google, and we tell a simple tale of genius and destiny. We edit out all the luck, the near failures, the chaotic reality. We make the past look neat and predictable.
Which leads to hindsight bias, the I knew it all along effect.
Exactly. After an event happens, we feel as though it was inevitable. We can't accurately reconstruct how uncertain we actually felt before it happened. This makes us believe the world is far more predictable than it really is.
And that fuels our overconfidence in our ability to predict the future.
Which leads to excessive risk-taking. It's a dangerous cycle.
So what's the antidote? If our intuition is so flawed, how can we make better plans and predictions?
The primary solution is to adopt the outside view.
The outside view, as opposed to the inside view.
Right. The inside view is our natural tendency. When we start a project, we focus on our specific plan, our unique talents, our best-case scenario. This is the planning fallacy. We are wildly optimistic.
There's a great story about this with a team developing a new curriculum.
Yeah, they were a team of experts, and they estimated the project would take about 2 years. Then one of them, who had experience with other teams, was asked to think about it from the outside.
And what was his estimate?
He said that based on his knowledge of similar projects, the reference class, it would take 7 to 10 years, and there was a 40% chance it would never be finished at all.
And what was the actual result?
It took 8 years. The outside view is far more accurate because it ignored the specifics of their optimistic plan and just looked at the statistical reality of similar ventures.
So for any financial plan, whether it's a business or paying off your mortgage, you need to ask, what are the outcomes for other people who've tried this, not how smart am I?
You have to think like a statistician. And part of that means relying on simple algorithms and rules over your own expert intuition.
That feels cold.
Yeah.
A formula is better than an expert.
In many, many domains, yes. A simple formula ensures consistency. It's not affected by mood or hunger or a recent dramatic news story. A great example is the APGAR score for newborns.
Right, which standardized how you assess a baby's health right after birth.
Before that, it was just a doctor's general clinical judgment. The APGAR score created a simple 5-point checklist. It standardized care and dramatically reduced infant mortality because it forced everyone to consider the same critical factors every single time.
So structure beats intuition. One final tool for fighting overconfidence is the premortem.
The premortem is brilliant. It's an exercise you do before making a big decision. You get your team together and you say, okay, imagine it's a year from now. We went ahead with this plan and it was an absolute unmitigated disaster. Take 5 minutes and write the history of that disaster.
And what does that do?
It makes it psychologically safe to be critical. It legitimizes doubt. People will surface risks that they were previously unwilling to mention for fear of sounding negative or not being a team player. It's a structured way to force your team to look for the gorilla. Okay, so that's how we think. Now let's talk about how we choose, especially when risk is involved. This is the world of prospect theory. And the single most important finding is loss aversion.
Loss aversion. The simple idea that losses loom larger than gains.
Much larger. Psychologically, the pain of losing $100 is far more intense than the pleasure of gaining $100.
And they've actually measured this, right?
They have. The loss aversion coefficient is about 2, which means a loss feels roughly twice as powerful as a gain of the same size.
So if I'm offered a 50-50 bet where I could win $150 or lose $100, rationally I should take it. The expected value is positive.
A rational agent would, but most people won't, because the pain of losing that $100 feels like a $200 loss, which outweighs the pleasure of the $150 gain. Our brains are wired to avoid threats first.
And this leads directly to the endowment effect.
The endowment effect. Once you own something, it becomes more valuable to you. Parting with it feels like a loss.
The coffee mug study.
The classic. They give half the people in a room a coffee mug. Then they ask the owners at what price they'd sell it, and they ask the non-owners what price they'd pay to buy one.
And the owners always ask for way more.
About double. Because for them, selling the mug is a loss. For the buyer, it's only a gain. That gap is created purely by the pain of loss aversion.
This explains so much about why it's hard to sell things, especially investments. Selling a stock for less than you paid feels terrible.
It feels like admitting a failure. Because of loss aversion and something called mental accounting, we hate to close an account in the red. So we hold on to our losers for way too long, hoping they'll come back to even when the rational move is to sell, take the tax loss, and reinvest elsewhere.
So our attitude towards risk isn't stable. It changes depending on the situation. This is all summarized in the fourfold pattern.
Right. The fourfold pattern shows how our risk preferences flip-flop in predictable ways. Let's walk through the 4 quadrants.
Okay.
Quadrant 1, a high probability of a large gain. For example, you have a 95% chance to win $10,000. Here, we become very risk-averse. We fear the disappointment of losing, so we're willing to accept a sure thing of, say, $9,000, even though it's less than the expected value of the gamble.
We lock in the game.
We lock it in. Now, quadrant 2, a low probability of a large gain. This is the lottery ticket.
And here we become risk-seeking.
We overweight that tiny chance of a life-changing win. We're happy to pay for the dream, even though the ticket is statistically worthless.
Makes sense. So what about losses?
This is where it gets interesting. Quadrant 3, a high probability of a large loss. Imagine you are certain to lose $9,000, or you can take a 95% chance of losing $10,000.
The sure loss is so painful, You'd rather gamble.
Exactly. Here, we become aggressively risk-seeking. We'd rather take the small chance of losing nothing, even if it means risking a slightly larger loss. This is why people double down on bad investments. They're trying to avoid booking a certain loss.
And the last quadrant, a low probability of a large loss.
This is insurance.
Yeah.
Here, we are extremely risk-averse. We overweight the small chance of a catastrophe. We're willing to pay a premium, which is more than the expected cost of the risk, just to have the peace of mind of eliminating that worry completely.
Wow. So we're only rational in one of those 4 boxes. Otherwise, we're predictably irrational.
Pretty much. And all of this is managed by our flawed system of mental accounting.
Treating money differently depending on where it came from.
Exactly. A tax refund gets treated like fun money and spent on a vacation, while the same amount from your salary is serious money for bills. But a dollar is a dollar. This irrational bucketing leads to bad decisions.
Like the sunk cost fallacy. The person who paid for a concert ticket will drive through a snowstorm to go. But the person who got the ticket for free will stay home.
Because the person who paid hates closing that mental account with a loss. The cost of the ticket and the missed show. The rational person knows the money for the ticket is gone either way. The only decision is whether the pleasure of the show is worth the risk of driving in a storm.
And the root of all these problems is what you call narrow framing.
Narrow framing. Looking at each decision in isolation. When you do that, loss aversion kicks in every single time, making you overly cautious.
So the solution is broad framing.
Broad framing. You aggregate all your decisions. You don't look at one stock trade. You look at your entire portfolio's performance over a year. You don't agonize over one risky bet. You have a policy of making many small positive value bets, knowing some will lose, but the portfolio as a whole will win.
This connects directly to strategies like ours. Velocity banking isn't about one mortgage payment. It's about seeing your entire debt and cash flow system as one big machine. Covered calls aren't about one trade. It's about a consistent policy for generating income from your whole portfolio.
That's a perfect application. It's about moving from emotional, one-off decisions to a disciplined, statistical policy. That's how you use System 2 to overcome the dangerous instincts of System 1.
We spent a lot of time today really getting into the architecture of, well, our own financial failures, and more importantly, the psychological tools we need to build for success. We've talked about that constant fight between the fast bias System 1 and the slow logical System 2. We've gone over the predictable errors from heuristics like availability and anchoring, the huge cost of overconfidence from WIS-IATI, and of course the massive role of loss aversion and framing in all our choices.
We did. We spent time on that key countermeasure, adopting the outside view. And we showed that simple statistical policies can, and often do, outperform our so-called expert intuition. What's interesting is that in our daily lives, our excessive optimism from the planning fallacy is often held in check by our extreme caution from loss aversion. It kind of balances out, but it leads to, well, mediocre results. The superior path is to eliminate both biases with structured policies. And so the question for you to think about is this. In your own financial life, your investing, your business, your debt strategy, are you just letting your intuitive, optimistic inner agent run the show? Or are you imposing the necessary structure, the statistical discipline, and the broad framing of a strong System 2 to finally overcome the high cost of intellectual sloth?
If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to subscribe our YouTube channel, social media accounts, and visit fatterwallets.com for more content, free courses, resources, and tools to help you live wisely and build wealth with purpose.